think I'm live. Am I live? Yes, all right. Hi everyone, I'm Shivani Sharma. And I'm here, I'm a senior engineering manager at Slack. I've been at Slack for about 4.5 years. So have been through all the mega growth phase, both people-wise and also business-wise and user-wise. And I'm here to talk to you about how we approached de-risking big bets. So first of all, how many of you have started using Slack 5 years ago, if you can raise your hand? That's a good amount. How about 3 years ago? All right, more. 1 year ago? All right, we have some new users as well. Awesome. Cool. So I lead the activation engineering team at Slack. So we're the team that's focused on new users and new teams getting up to speed and for the very first time. We also focus on retaining those users and for getting deeper engagement, so user sophistication. So that's through our education team. And that's for them to learn about key features that will make them get the most value out of Slack. So our mission is to make every Slack team successful from the very start. So that means ensuring that users see the benefits of Slack and what it can bring to their work so that they can keep returning to Slack day after day, week after week, and successfully using the product. There's also a symbiotic relationship between our mission and our Slack platform organization. So more users returning day after day because they're getting the value out of Slack means there's more users using Slack apps. But then we also know that when users are using Slack apps, they're more likely to have that aha moment that makes them understand what Slack is all about, and they're more likely to be successful long term. And as Slack has grown, the demographic of our users has expanded beyond the early adopters. The early adopters were developers like us. So frankly, Slack users today look a lot less like Slack employees than they did 5 years ago. Our users now include people across a wide spectrum of industry, job functions, and countries around the world. So how do we go about building a product that works equally well for developers like us at Slack, but also for salespeople in Tokyo or an accountant in Frankfurt? So that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. There was no quick fix here, and in order to make a big bet, we had to reduce the risk of this effort failing. So I'm going to start by talking about how we take a portfolio approach to testing key hypotheses to make sure that we're building features that really matter. I'll also talk about how we pull everything together, how we pull everything that we learned together to make these big bets. And finally, even when we're making the big bets, how we think about breaking the problem down so that we can both build quickly and build for scale. So first, I'm going to start with some definitions so that you know what I'm talking about with regards to Slack. So there's two ways that a user gets started using Slack. They're either one of the folks creating a Slack workspace, we call them creators, and there's being invited to join a Slack, and we call those folks joiners. So up until this past year, in 2019, we were focused mostly on creators. But as you can see, there's 10 times the number of creators and 10 times the number of joiners than there are creators. So there was a huge opportunity here to learn more about the joiners and get some value out of, provide value for them and also grow our business. So there's a lot that we could do to help way more people if we focus on joiners versus just creators. So this was a set of users that we actually hadn't focused on before. So how do you go about solving the problem in a space that's totally new to you? So we used a portfolio approach to validate the hypotheses we had for how we might improve the new user experience for them. First, we started out with a set of hypotheses based on data analysis and user research. So maybe if we made the account creation flow simpler and removed friction, it would help. Maybe if we help new users download the native Slack app for their computers and smartphones so that they could actually get notifications on real-time messaging. Or maybe if we help people get into conversations right away, because Slack is about concurrent conversations, and that's actually what draws the value into getting collaboration and work done more quickly. Second, we took a portfolio approach to test these hypotheses by running a number of experiments. So a portfolio approach means we set a goal to build experiments in a wide range of areas to learn from, rather than focusing all in one area and taking a big bet right away. So this approach let us figure out which features and hypotheses were highest impact so that we could reprioritize our portfolio based on real results. If something worked, we'd invest more. If it didn't, then we hadn't spent too many cycles on the engineering side, and we could move on to the next idea on our list, hoping that it would have more impact. So in the beginning of 2019, we actually went through and ran over a dozen experiments, and we had various results that gave us signal, also areas not to focus on, and then some results that were a little inconclusive. So this was very helpful to know where we focus on next. So as an example, here's a hypothesis that we had that we disproved through a quick project. Originally, we thought it would be a good idea to make the account creation flow shorter so that it would take less time to get into Slack to actually see what the product was about, and so for users to actually be able to poke around and understand what Slack is. However, we found that there wasn't much we could do to increase the completion rates because they were already decently high to begin with, and there wasn't more optimization that we could do there. So it was good that we started out small to validate that impact. Otherwise, this would have led to wasted effort optimizing designs and building this feature on each of our platforms. Here's a hypothesis that did work out based on several successful projects in our portfolio. This was a hypothesis that it's really important to get new users into conversations faster. Previously, users landed in a Slackbot DM, and now we land you right in a channel, and you're encouraged to send your first message. In this experiment, we saw a significant increase in messages sent on day one, and that actually resulted in thousands of incremental users coming back to Slack each week. So those are some of the examples of how we tested different hypotheses with the portfolio approach in order to make sure we were working on the highest impact features. So like I said earlier, we ran over a dozen experiments in a quarter purely for learning. So we had a learning OKR and learn where the signals were. And this actually laid the groundwork for our new Getting Started onboarding experience. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how we tied all those smaller projects and learnings into this one big bet to roll it out into the Get Started page. And by the way, this is now out to GA for new teams and tenured teams. While we launched several individual features successfully, we learned from user research, customer support feedback, and from our experiment data that our users wanted and would benefit if we tied everything together into a unified new user onboarding experience. So the Get Started page is Slack's new home base for new users, and this page is the first of its kind in Slack, which is why it was a big bet. It was a new area. We didn't know how people would respond. There were three key things that we learned that our users valued throughout this process. The first was autonomy and control. Above all, users wanted autonomy. Through user research, we learned that participants preferred having a dedicated space because it let them choose their level of engagement. It also catered to different learning behaviors. There's some people that want to go through the whole product at once. Some people want to pick and choose what they want to learn, and some people don't want it at all and would rather poke around on their own. So a dedicated place lets them do what they want. Second, users want to be able to stop and resume learning at their own pace. They expected education to be persistent and easy to find and return to. With the dedicated place, we offer a lobby concierge of onboarding. So it leads you where you should be, but it disappears when you no longer need it. Third, they want to know why. They look to educational content to understand why they should use Slack. Therefore, the Getting Started page is value-focused and not feature-focused. Okay. So when it came to building the Getting Started page, we had to strike a balance between defining and building the perfect modular design system and engineering system versus the speed of executing and getting this out to market to learn quickly how users were going to respond. So first, a modular design and engineering system, both of them are important. It's important to have a consistent look and feel throughout the product for when we continue to iterate, but also if other teams also want to create a page within Slack like this, so that it has a cohesive feel. It also provides the building blocks to achieve high speed of execution in the future to be able to reuse those design and engineering components. Speed of execution is also important for getting results and learnings faster, especially for the first release, so that we can validate whether we should go deeper or whether we should move on to another area. So here are, can we scroll the notes? Thank you. So we had to strike a balance between the modular design system and engineering blocks. So this is actually an example of how our components have iterated over time between our first, second, and third iteration of that welcome place before we went to GA. And this is our say hello engineering and design component that we started out with. So one more important investment we made was to maximize our speed of execution. To maximize our speed of execution was to build a logging library. So this library could be incorporated into the individual front-end components with just a few lines of code that automatically captured the impression when the component was actually in the user's viewport, because this page was actually ended up being a very long and vertical page with lots of components on it, and so we wanted to automatically capture it, not when it was rendered, but when it was actually viewed by the user. And this minimized our turnaround time because we could launch an experiment, collect thorough data on how users were interacting with the page that gave us insights, and the analysis to actually determine the learnings much more quickly because they were more thorough. And that actually allowed us turnaround time to actually do 3 iterations within just a couple of months to then get to GA very quickly. I think if we had done it the old way, it would have taken a lot longer. So from the engineering side, the Get Started page also can be modified to add, remove, and change positions of the components on the page, along with all the logging with minimal engineering effort. So we're just at the very beginning, and we'll continue to iterate on what's getting included in the Get Started page. So there's a feature on how we might show people how to translate their day-to-day workflows into Slack. We also want to introduce applications and integrations because we know that there's a good symbiotic relationship there for people to be considered successful teams, which is one of our metrics internally. And the possibilities are endless on how we can educate users to get deeper engagement and more sophistication. So we're actually working on extending this to our enterprise grid product. So this is at scale for really large customers. And so that not just new users, but tenured users and large enterprise customers also get the benefit of new employees joining their organization. They know where to begin, they know who's in their teams, they know where to get started and where the most important information are. And that can be overwhelming if you've never used Slack before and you're joining an established team, especially at the enterprise level at a large company. So some key takeaways to de-risk building something greenfield and something brand new. Formulate your hypotheses and take a portfolio approach to validate them. Go deeper with user research, and then invest in the areas of opportunity. And then design for iteration from the start to continue to improve the feature and extend over larger and larger audiences over time. Thank you.